And I think one does not look to the United Nations for help. I think that having marches and protests and demonstrations is a complete waste of time. Total waste of time.
That's interesting.
Especially on a Saturday when none of these diplomats are sitting in their embassies, when nobody is working at the Commonwealth on a Saturday. Forget it. It might make you feel good to go on a demonstration, but it's pointless.
So make una listen to the advice where Rebecca Tinsley began to Chris Anu when he be there live with you. But when I hear what way this woman, when I hear it could try your best for give advice to Chris Anu. And despite the advice where they try your best to give Chris Anu go come back for the original position where we get them. Where it means that they don't get them the ability for listen to advice or for take a lesson.
Their colonial role. So believe me, I am very aware of the role. However, may I say that what I understand about British politicians is that they do not care about your history. They're not interested. They don't want to hear people from Ambazonia talking about what happened in 1960 and 1961. They're not interested.
Why do you think they're not interested?
I know they're not interested because I'm British and I mix with politicians all the time.
Right. Do you see any motivation, any particular motivation behind their action?
No, it is very important that you hear what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
They are not interested in your history. They are not interested in listening to people from your country getting very angry. And every time that one of your politicians gets extremely angry with the British, it is self-defeating. You are not going to win their sympathy. What you need to do is talk about today and the future, because they are simply not interested. You are wasting your breath if you talk about the history of 1961, because they don't want to know. It embarrasses them.
Is this because they were part of it and they failed in that assignment? Could that be the reason?
It's also, yes, part of the reason, but also the British are not interested in their colonial history because it is embarrassing to them.
Wow, that is quite revealing. That is quite very, very revealing. Now, let's about what would your advice be?
Well, the first thing is that I think it's incredibly important not to be responsible for atrocities. And I will be very honest here. The activities of some of the Amber Boys, it is meaning that you are losing sympathy from the international community. You know that many Western countries, the white world, they have a look at Africa and they say, they're all bad. Each side is bad. They are morally equivalent. They say, oh, it's all terrible, and we don't want to choose sides. Okay, now when the Amber Boys, if they are responsible for atrocities, then unfortunately the rest of the world looking at the situation in the Cameroons will say, oh, we don't want anything to do with this. They're all as bad as each other. I think it's incredibly important to get sympathy for your cause, that you are not seen as contributing to the atrocities and the human rights abuses, because people will lose sympathy with you.
Now, without defending some of the atrocities, maimings, as you described in your letter that we have seen in the southern Cameroons, doesn't the international community also understand that when people are attacked, they have the right to defend themselves?
Of course, I think they understand that in theory, but I am just expressing to you the weariness that many Western leaders feel when they look at Africa. They don't have the time to go into the detail, but when they see that atrocities are being carried out by the minority group, then they lose sympathy. They find it more difficult to argue on your behalf. And that is why I think it's incredibly important to use peaceful means. And I think one does not look to the United Nations for help. And actually, the Cameroons have a double problem with the United Nations, because President Biya's armed forces are doing the dirty work of the United Nations in the far north by fighting Boko Haram.
Correct.
And as you probably know, that inoculates President Biya from criticism. So the United Nations, because let's be really honest, a lot of white nations do not want to put white soldiers into battle in the war on terror fighting Boko Haram. They would rather pay black African nations to go and fight their war on terror on their behalf. It's a proxy war. And President Biya is doing a favor, just as President Déby in Chad is. He is doing a favor to the Western world by putting his troops in to fight on behalf of the West. That, as I say, inoculates President Biya from the criticism of the United Nations.
I think that is some hard talk, some really, really hard talk there.
However, I have to say that all of these groups believe in peace, and they will not want to be associated with any groups that are using violence.
Are you then insinuating that the Southern Cameroons is using violence?
I'm saying that some of the Amber Boys are using violence and destruction against innocent, unarmed civilians, and that this loses the sympathy of the world. And I think that no respectable peace or mediation group will want to be involved as long as there are human rights abuses and atrocities are taking place.
Are you aware that there are militias in the Southern Cameroons? Go on, please.
But I'm sorry, but I also know other people who are from Cameroon, who are anglophone Cameroons, who are sympathetic to the activities, to the violent activities of secessionists. And I'm sorry, but no respectable peace organization will want to be associated with those violent groups.
Well, you are absolutely correct, and we here at the interim government of Amazonia, we have done everything to educate our boys who represent us in the restoration forces. The war is against French Cameroon. It is not against Ambazonian versus it's not about Ambazonian versus Ambazonian, and they are very much aware of that. And every time they have gone out and committed a crime, we have rebuked them and sometimes called for the firing of some of them. That is how far we go. But you also have to realize that we did not provoke this war.
In 1961, I'm ashamed of that, but here is the truth. And I know the truth doesn't make any sense and it hurts. But a lot of international politicians, diplomats, they're very busy people. And you have to decide if you want to get very angry with them and tell them what a terrible job they did in 1961, or whether you actually want to get them on your side and pushing for peaceful negotiations. That is a choice, because I have to tell you that diplomats in the Western world are not interested in getting a history lesson. They're just not interested in it. So you have to decide whether you want to rant and rave at them and be very angry at them, or whether you want to push the buttons that they will respond to. And that is, as I said before, talking about human rights violations and the need for a peaceful and prosperous future for Cameroon.
Okay, now you will realize that the same international community is the one saying, let's get back to the root causes of this conflict. And when you say they are not interested in going back to the causes, isn't that a little contradictory?
No, well, you see, I don't agree with you that they want to go to the root causes. I don't think they've ever said they want to look at the root causes. You know, they take a superficial view at every subject, because Cameroon is one of dozens of problems on the international agenda. They are not going to look into the root causes, whatever they may say. And I know that the truth hurts, and I'm sorry to have to say this, but this is my advice, having associated with Western politicians for a very long time. I think I know them fairly well, and I do know that their eyes glaze over the minute you start talking about the past. That's why you have to talk about the future and what could be done now. I understand your anger. You have every reason to feel angry, but the horrible truth is that Western diplomats have a very short attention span, and Cameroon is in competition with many other countries with conflict. Cameroon must therefore find the most effective strategy for getting the attention of Western diplomats. And I respectfully suggest to you that the best route is to concentrate on the human rights abuses that are happening right now, on the humanitarian catastrophe that is affecting Cameroon right now, because you must understand that they are not interested in the past. You and I both know that they bear responsibility for the things that went wrong in the past, but that is not a subtle or clever way to get the sympathy of Western diplomats. I have great respect for the fact that you are trying to influence British decision makers. Thank you for doing that. What I am about to say is controversial. I think that having marches and protests and demonstrations is a complete waste of time. Total waste of time.
That's interesting.
Especially on a Saturday when none of these diplomats are sitting in their embassies, when nobody is working at the Commonwealth on a Saturday. Forget it. It might make you feel good to go on a demonstration, but it's pointless. Their colonial role. So believe me, I am very aware of the role. However, may I say that what I understand about British politicians is that they do not care about your history. They're not interested. They don't want to hear people from Ambazonia talking about what happened in 1960 and 1961. They're not interested.
Why do you think they're not interested?
I know they're not interested because I'm British and I mix with politicians all the time.
Right. Do you see any motivation, any particular motivation behind their action?
No, it is very important that you hear what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
They are not interested in your history. They are not interested in listening to people from your country getting very angry. And every time that one of your politicians gets extremely angry with the British, it is self-defeating. You are not going to win their sympathy. What you need to do is talk about today and the future, because they are simply not interested. You are wasting your breath if you talk about the history of 1961, because they don't want to know. It embarrasses them.
Is this because they were part of it and they failed in that assignment? Could that be the reason?
It's also, yes, part of the reason, but also the British are not interested in their colonial history because it is embarrassing to them.
Wow, that is quite revealing. That is quite very, very revealing. Now, let's in the French and the British. The French seem to be very, very engaged with their former colonies, and as you said, with the British, they seem not to care. What is the difference? Is it because the French depend so much on their former colonies for survival, or what?
That's a very good point. When the British left its colonies, it just walked out. It left, and shut the door. I believe that the French never actually left its colonies. France still has big economic, political, and military links, whereas the British, they just left. And I think that was because the British were embarrassed, and the British do not want to talk about their colonial past at all. And I find this whenever I talk to British officials, is that they become embarrassed when I say, look, we owe something to the people in the Cameroons because we were involved there. And instead, they want to be morally equivalent. In other words, they want to say, we are neutral, we're sitting here in the middle, and we don't want to know about the past. This is why I beg your politicians to not talk about the past. I beg your politicians to concentrate on the future. in talking about the kind, what steps would you like the international community to take now?
But if I may ask you though, how do you talk about the future without talking about the past? Because you will not have the future if your past is not cleared. They have to come to the realization that the Southern Cameroons did not get independence, proper independence, as stipulated by UN Article 1608. The British, as you said, just left, picked up their bags, and left. So, how do you talk about the future without trying to explain the past?
I believe that you have to take a different path. You have to talk about human rights abuses right now. You have to talk about atrocities right now. You have to talk about the right of people to self-determination right now. If you actually want to get the international community to take any notice at all, you talk about human rights abuses. You talk about the fact that 500,000 people have had to flee their homes. You talk about the fact that your politicians have been incarcerated in prison, tortured. You talk about the fact that 40,000 people have fled to Nigeria. You talk about the fact that women are being raped. You talk about 400,000 children not able to go to school. You talk about clinics and hospitals being closed. You talk about civil society being under siege. These are the things that actually ring the bell of the international community. Then they sit up and they take notice. But if you lecture them about the past, they will not want to hear it. And if you get angry with them about the past, you are only alienating them, when really you want them to be on your side. So why not talk to them in a language that they understand? And that is the language of human rights.
The problem there with that, though, is when you're talking about human rights, they are looking for a solution in some form of inclusiveness between the two parties, French Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons. They are not looking at the illegalities of decolonization. So that's a problem we see, because we have seen major powers, the UK, the US, Canadians say, yeah, we need some kind of democracy, power sharing, but an independent Southern Cameroon says, we're not sure yet. That is a problem.
It is a problem, but in a way, it is not their business. It is the business of the people of your country. And that is why our focus, and the focus of our letter to President Macron, was simply to make sure that there are legitimate, inclusive negotiations. When we get those negotiations, then it is up to civil society and armed groups and all the legitimate voices of your people to be heard. Then it is your role to decide whether you have federalism or devolution or secession. But it is not for the international community to be telling you what to do.
So, my country people, them, when I don't hear what way Christopher Anu, a come for talk with that British journalist and philanthropist, where it try its best for advise Chris Anu and these so-called Amazonians, them, but it's a losing battle. Chris Anu, he face. Now, one of the things in that way when I need to pay attention to when I watch this video, your facial expression. See how the information where that woman they give you, it is touchy for his soul because see facial expression, because now information that way Amber fools they no one here. They no one here. They no one hear the truth. Now because they don't convince themselves with so many lies for so long, for the way the truth it hit them so hard. So the first and most important thing where the woman tell him over and over and over again, Nasivity, focus on the future. Focus on human rights. The woman tell him, say, do not look to the UN for help. And just to highlight that point, my country people, them, when I pay attention on the screen, I want to put something on the screen, make when I read them. When I remember this tweet, where Tibor Nagy tweeted on the 20th of August, 2024, less than 1 month ago, Tibor Nagy be tell them, he said, on Amazonia, and some folks still believe in the United Nations Resolution 1608 happening. Sorry, let's be real. Only 3 ways for Ambazonian to get self-determination. Either you win them through military victory, or negotiate some kind of referendum, or Cameroon government just decide for hand part of the territory to you. But the United Nations Resolution 1608 is a false god. And ma show una talking about Resolution 1608, now in that on the screen, when I look on the screen, Resolution 1608 about the future of the trust territory of the Cameroons under United Kingdom administration. The first thing where they talk about that resolution now is the General Assembly, because they will talk now about the General Assembly, where today the President of the United Nations General Assembly, na Okuman, His Excellency Philemon Yang. But we could come to that, my country people them. Make we focus, we'll go back for Rebecca Tinsley and wait away it talk for Chris Anu. Focus on, say, hundreds of thousands of school picking, they no fit go school. Focus on the IDPs, the refugees them. Focus on human rights. Focus on the future where you want them for that country. If you talk about the past, you are wasting your breath. It talk it said the international community is not interested in your history in 1961. Talking about that is a waste of your breath. And this is why it be so difficult for the Amber terrorists for take that message and then they digest them. Because the atrocities are being committed by the Amber terrorists, as the woman tell you. After all of those things, then we talk and then Chris Anu ask you, say, what would you advise the Ambazonians? The woman tell you, say, it is very important for the minority, the Amber terrorists, for not being seen by the international community as the ones committing atrocities, because they go lose international sympathy. So now I understand why the Amber terrorists, they hate me more than they hate President Paul Biya, because now they desperately need the international community for focus on Cameroon, for pay attention to what way they happen for Cameroon, because they don't get the capability or the ability for get outright military victory. So they desperately need someone else will be bigger for can help them in this fight, for give them sympathy. And whenever we display on the international community the atrocities, the way Ambazonian terrorists they commit them, the kidnapping for ransoms, the wanton killings and murders, the stopping of children from going to school, all of those things, the fundamental human rights for picking them. Now they're picking them that on the screen. Those picking them, now the real victims of Ambazonian terrorism. All of these picking them where they want to go for school, but terrorists, they stop them and they don't go for school. When we broadcast all of this reality, the international community no fit ever pay attention to the Amber terrorists. They need to give them the sympathy where they desperately need them. Nobody has said they want sympathy, they need them. Without the sympathy of the international community, Ambazonia is Facebook noise. They desperately need the international community for give them that sympathy. Now, why that way? Everything where they do they beg, send me the international community, they pay attention to them. And despite all of that, this woman, Rebecca Tinsley, he can't tell them, say, they commit atrocities. And as a result of that, no self-respecting organization, it no go pay attention to Una. It no go want to associate with any organization or group where they commit atrocities them, where they commit human rights violations them. And the Ambazonian terrorists, they don't come openly, publicly, can't declare them, say they so they don't want picking them, they go school. Eric Tato don't talk them. As a matter of fact, before we continue, for highlight the point, I go play for Una. Now, Ambazonian terrorists, their position on schools and education now in this, before I come back, can finish analysis on this video. When I listen to the Ambazonian terrorists, because Chris Anu tell you, say, I hope, say, the international community also knows, say, there are militias in Cameroon. The woman said, no. Forget about whatever militias where you talk about them. Me, I know Ambazonians, people the way they support Ambazonia publicly, where they advocate for human rights violations in the anglophone zone. So whether you want to talk about militias or whatever nonsense you want to blame someone else, no. I didn't talk about the ones who I know. I didn't talk about the ones where I know. And I always come with evidence. When I listen, or when I go talk to Eric Tato, no be Ambazonia, Eric Tato na militia, Ayabacho we carry 2 people, they put them for public square, execute them. Na Ambazonian, na militias, na La Republic, na Antangaji boys. Come on. The things say we stupid now how. When I watch and listen.
Now the part I want away, any man would watch me after the video, me call the particular part by part distributor. Starting with, we have said there is no school. In the next show, we'll calibrate the focus of the no school issue for people to understand that when we say no school, mean no school. And actions have been taken. I don't want to say a lot of things here about the no school issue because this time I'll act more. You'll see something. You'll see something. You know why they call me Gary Master. I take the personal initiative. Gary go day for one finger for picking the hand they won't go school for any part of Southern Cameroon. Because why we take this school issue to the Republic? So for Southern Cameroon, not be having job. So if you listen to me, send them down for any mommy say, if I see any people for school, if I see any people for school, I you know what I very possessive. So I take the responsibility, man, every step of coding anywhere. I will teach the Peking how to teach Gary. I will teach you, I will give Gary lesson. Nonsense. When I think of the for joke, when they keep people that can't talk about school, no school, no, that is it. See, listen, not Mr. Man, LeBron Steve, not tell me no. Any picture go me the Gary the Peking. In fact, I don't move from one finger to the entire hand. If any Peking go there, Gary one hand. Gary one hand. Nonsense. When I think of the general joke, one thing I know correct, or not. In fact, LeBron Steve, I don't beg, I don't change my mind. Now one hand now. Any picture go there for school, give Gary for his whole hand. The whole hand. Put Gary there. So that when go have the mommy asking away, mommy have to make Gary. Now Gary do me so. The people will understand. The other one will get the message. No man will go straight in. Nonsense. When I feel the joke, shit. When I go to school, Musiam.
So my contribute them. When I don't hear, now Eric Tato that it talk him for video with the face and the voice. It say my name na Eric Tato, quote me anywhere. So you could then talk say the human right atrocities, and because education is a fundamental human right according to the international community, the United Nations. So now why that way it be so difficult? As a matter of fact, it be impossible for the Amber terrorists to take this advice. Focus on the future, because the only thing where they get them now the past. Resolution 1608. That's all. They don't put all their hopes on. They bring una this picture where I'll put them on the screen now. This picture, the biggest lie where anglophones they don't ever gear for their own people them. Jongo Fon Chadad and Estimuna them. Molan Jo Litumbe them. Say they go for America, United Nations, they get ships at Ambas Bay, United Nations, they come, all of those things them lies. Okay, so they no fit ever let go of the past because that's all they have. Second thing, they say focus on human rights violations. They cannot talk about human rights violations because they are the ones committing the human rights atrocities on the ground inside Cameroon. When I look at the picture we do on the screen, now picking them that way, they're supposed to do for school. Now school picking them that child soldiers, none of that picking them. Maybe one or two of that picking they don't pass the age of 18. The rest of them then are under the age of 18. Now school building that way don't take them, turn them into Amber camp. Okay, when I think that the international community they see these pictures, them they see them because me I personally send them to them. Okay, now the picking them that, now the school picking them that. When I see the pictures in this what I show now on the screen, I provide una evidence. Now the school picking them that. So they just stop picking them, they no go for school. And when I remember a Kondo Titi massacre, now evidence this. They go for school, go kill school picking them. So it's not just about threats. Now the evidence this way will show them to the international community. Say Cameroon military, they help picking them when they go for school, escort them for school. Ambassador terrorists, they enter for school, kill school picking them. So when that woman they talk because they get the evidence. He know what way they happen on the ground. He no be stupid. No matter how Chris Anu, they want for twist talk, go up and down, all this stupidity does not work. Because these people them in the international community, they get the fact because we feed them the information. Now, whatever Paul Nilong tell when I say, or Erka to tell when I say my country people is a force to reckon with. Paul would Nilong, they tell when I say the harm that country people has done to this our revolution. As a matter of fact, for make the point, make it be abundantly clear. I want make una listen to this one. Now, Capo Daniel go talk.
But this is the reality. People listen to the devil himself, my country people of La Republique, more than they listen to some Amazonian activists. This is the reality.
So when I don't hear the reality, people them, whether they're on the ground or the international, they listen to me and wait where would they put them out there more than wait where the amber terrorists they get them out into the international community. All of these people, them, Rebecca Tinsley, T-Bone Nagy, them, the United States Senate, and all of those people, they follow our page, the American Embassy for Cameroon, the British High Commission, all of those people, them, they want to find out any information, they follow our Facebook page, they follow with our website, they follow all the information we will put them. And when I don't forget, I get direct communication with the people, the way they autontone them, the people that they get the powers for pay for Yaoundé. Okay? And they send all of this evidence to them and they pass them on to the international community. For example, now the same people in this, where they want the sympathy of the international community. In your own words, when I listen.
This is the moment to confiscate anything and everything United Nations has on the ground in our territory. Every United Nations official or piece of equipment that is seen moving or standing anywhere in Amazonia must be hurriedly, and I mean hurriedly, confiscated.
When I don't hear no, now Chris Anu that they talk, no be me. They attack the United Nations. Okay, now talking about atrocities them on the ground. When I listen to this one.
No Southern Cameroonian, particularly a fighter on the ground. When you are fighting, please keep aside anything called international convention that might come after you tomorrow. When you are fighting, keep aside anything called international convention that you think might come after you tomorrow. If it is to kill La Republican citizens and even kill pregnant women, let them be 1 million. Kill them. That is what is going to cause the international community not to be sending diplomatic envoys across. They will send soldiers down there to cause a buffer zone between the Southern Cameroon people and La Republic of Cameroon. If it is to massacre them for a day, 50,000, do just that. That is what is going to attract international attention and action. Never you guys be afraid of any damn thing called international conventions or Geneva, whatever convention. Don't keep that behind your memory. Do the job that will free you and stop thinking of a certain convention elsewhere. You were never a signatory to that convention, like the Southern Cameroon people were never a signatory to that convention, and that those conventions got nothing to do with Southern Cameroon. A year.
So my country people them when I hear now me I talk no, not them. In your own words, they openly advocate for genocide, for atrocities them, and then they go ahead for commit the atrocities them. I remember say this Summer Thomas, he can record this video live for Chris Anu TV years after Rebecca Tinsley, he be advised them say, if we now want the sympathy of the international community, and if we now want the attention of the international community for una cause, do not be seen as the party committing atrocities. You have to go to equity with clean hands. Rebecca Tinsley advised them, come on, go. They can't talk, say, no, make we go kill pregnant women, them. That's how the international community it go give we attention. So they not ever learn. They take the opposite action from the advice where they give them. Now, this time around, this same Summer Thomas talking on this same Ayabacho, Chris Anu, his so-called Facebook page or TV, or how they call him. This same Summer Thomas, he can't talk this one now. It threaten the United Nations workers inside Cameroon. When I listen, Master, I come now with receipts and evidence now.
Any idiot where they run around Southern Cameroon say be UN official. Now an insult and a slap on the face of the Southern Cameroon people. They are the cause of the problem. And that problem was caused in New York. They should go back to New York. They handle the situation there and make corrections. When they finish those corrections, they can now come on the ground in the Southern Cameroon to say, we are sorry and we've corrected that mistake. But running around that they are the Southern Cameroons for humanitarian mission, a humanitarian crisis, which is caused in the Southern Cameroon by themselves to begin with, and they are not even stopping it. They are sending people to come and be given food or whatsoever, is an insult. Any member of the United Nations running around the Southern Cameroon under the canopy of the UN should be killed. I no need for the sugarcoat this statement again. Anybody running around the Southern Cameroon now under the UN flag should be killed. Show him no mercy, for it's the cause of the problem that is going on.
So when I don't hear the advice where Rebecca Tinsley, give Chris Anu, and when I don't hear years after, wait for the same Chris Anu, your Facebook page, Sama Thomas can they talk him, wait themselves they talk him. They attack now United Nations because they be frustrated. Because they don't try all things according to them, it no work. Now because of frustration, they turn now the same, they attack now United Nations instead. So I still bring one of the video for Pa Philemon Young. I still come with that one. So make I just wrap up for analyze this video for Rebecca Tinsley. It talk now say, no be na the business of the international community for decide what way they happen for Cameroon. Whether when I want arrange federation, devolution, secessionism, or whatever, no be na the business of the international community. Because it tells Chris Anu say, focus on the future, focus on human rights violations. Chris Anu say, the problem with that, now say, the international community will talk, say, we'll go make amends, we'll do some appeasement deal between Cameroon government and them so that they will remain as one country. Rebecca Tinsley say, whether that happened or not happen, what is that got to do with the United Nations? How is that the business of the British, the Americans, or whatever? I make when I understand, say, the work where we do it bear results, it yield fruits. Remember in the past, for 2018, when they talk about violence on both sides, the Amber terrorists, they be vexed. Say, no, there is no violence on both sides, there is violence on one side, because they be want for portray and for project that miscommunication or for fool the international community, saying now on the one side they commit atrocities, or now on the one side they produce violence. But themselves, they don't come produce the evidence with their kidnapping for ransoms, with the public executions them, with their own words on video. Say no, as a matter of fact, violence, it come more than 80% of the violence in the anglophone zone against civilians today for 2024. Now the Amber terrorists they commit them. Now the results, now information that from the international community. Capo Danego can elaborate on that in a short while. So that's how much we don't defeat ambassador terrorism and contribute them. That is how much we don't defeat them. So now the international community need to even still talk about violence on both sides. They talk now violence against people them like innocent civilians them. Children must go to school. Okay. And for highlight that point, I get more evidence to put them on the screen for now. So if you pay attention on the screen for a few seconds, when I go see this information right there on the screen. Now, when it comes to this thing about back to school, look at the people, the way the Amber terrorists they fight against. They fight against the apostolic nuncio for Cameroon, when Pope Francis is representative inside Cameroon. Look at the Mr. Volker Turk, when the United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights, he be there for Cameroon last month for August, and he put out a public statement. I go come read the public statement for now. Now the people in this way, the Amber terrorists they fight against. Look at the American ambassador for Yaoundé. By the way, the person we there for a corner. Now, Minister Felix Mbayu that we is there next to the ambassador for Yaoundé. The statement where the ambassador for Yaoundé where he put them out. When I remember that statement, no, now the statement this way there on the screen. It talks that schools are sanctuaries for learning and children must not be prevented from attending classes. Now, what is that way? The American government it talk regarding schools and ambassador terrorists, they know, say not only them, they stop picking them, may they not go for school. And the clergy, look at what way Archbishop Nkia Etokam, children must go to school. Now make we look at which way Volker Turk Ebitokam. Now in that, and I picture that on the 7th of August 2024 for Yaoundé, Volker Turk, when at the Human Rights Commissioner, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. And remember, say the United Nations recognize a humanitarian situation for Cameroon. That's all. They don't recognize that there is a war going on. They don't recognize anything else. They just recognize a human rights a situation where they happen in the northwest and the southwest region of Cameroon and in the far north with regards to Boko Haram. When I understand that reality, my contributor. So now what did this way Volker talk about them on the 7th of August 2024? He write them down on the United Nations, their website. When I go read them a day for day, it talks in the northwest and the southwest regions, what began as peaceful protests in 2016 has turned into a major crisis for the civilian population, with clashes between separatist groups, other armed groups, and security forces, including the military, leaving thousands killed, hundreds of thousands displaced, and the denial of the right to education to more than 700,000 children. Reports continue to emerge of human rights violations and abuses, including unlawful killings, ill treatment and torture, kidnappings for ransom, and restrictions on freedom of movement, the imposition of lockdown days by separatist groups, preventing children from going to school, people from accessing their livelihoods at the risk of being shot. This is unacceptable and should be roundly condemned. So that one at 7th of August 2024, where the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, he came down on the ground inside Cameroon and he leave this assessment, this statement, public statement, appreciation of the situation on the ground inside Cameroon. And what the Amber terrorists they do, 2 weeks later, they declare 1 month lockdown for prevent picking them in the no-go school. Another situation that in the anglophone zone. Now the pictures in that side by side. What way they happen for Northwest, where Cameroon military they escort picking them for go for school, and what way they happen with ambassador terrorism where they can't shoot picking them for school, kill them. That is it. So anglophones them, ambassador terrorists, they don't get the ability for learn. They just don't. Wonderfully international idiots. They don't have the ability for learn. Now, if you go back for which way Rebecca Tinsley talk, make I not forget this particular point. Rebecca Tinsley talk, or Chris Anu talk something about the root causes. Rebecca Tinsley corrected right there and they say, nah lie. Nobody, no, they talk about the root causes of nothing. No one has ever said that. No one. It talks say that's not what the international community is saying. And even if they will talk, no one will ever go back for go revisit the so-called root causes. No one. It not go happen. So it's not just Rebecca Tinsley. It is, look at the people the Amber terrorists are fighting against. Look at them. Now them that. Okay. Now people in the Amber terrorists they are fighting against the Pope, the clergy, the United Nations, the American government. Now the people in that way the Amber terrorists are fighting against. And then the things when I think say they go win. Not a chance in hell. And now why that way Tibon Nagy, ABB Force will put this tweet. Last month, August the 20th, 1 month never reached. Talk say the United Nations Resolution 1608 is a false god. It no go ever happen. But the Amber terrorists, they don't get the ability for learn. So now I go bring for you now the video where it come out from the United Nations, from the office of the President of the United Nations General Assembly. My contributor them. And before I bring una that, make una understand, say, the Resolution 1608, where the ambassador terrorists, they always hang their hat on, claim saying that you go give them independence, okay? It will be signed, it will be debated, and it will be adopted at the General Assembly. Now, the same General Assembly today, where Okuman will be the president of the United Nations General Assembly. And for this speech, where he read them on the 10th of September 2024, 4 days ago, His Excellency Philemon Yang, former prime minister for Cameroon, he thanked the head of state, President Paul Biya, for giving you this honor, for take this high office, this position. My country people them.